Good afternoon. Welcome, Monica.
Thank you, Anna.
How are you going today?
Good, good. How are you?
Good. I'm good. So nice to see you. We were just chatting off record, but so nice to like connect with people. But as we were saying, it can be a challenge in a different way, right? It's nice to connect, but also not quite the same as replacing classes in person.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So look, thank you for joining me. This is just a lovely chance for us to share a little bit more about you with our members, learn a few little fun facts about Monica. So why don't we start? Well, we all know, I mean, I think we all know that you're not an Australian. We can pick up that from the sound of your lovely voice. Tell us a little bit about your hometown, home country.
Yeah, so I'm from Calgary, Alberta, which is in Western Canada. And a lot of people know Calgary for the famous Calgary Stampede, which is just a week full of rodeo and fun. It's a real mix of just sort of carnival cowboy sort of atmosphere, with a little bit of glitz and glamour. So that's the city that I come from. It's the city of oil and gas. It's a bit of a one-trick pony city, unfortunately.
Right.
Economically, they're not doing so great now, but I was very fortunate in that, you know, I got to grow up around, you know, really beautiful mountainside right outside of our doors.
Gorgeous. Yeah.
So we would always have the view of that, you know, of the mountains, and we could always go to the mountains whenever we wanted. So that was really accessible. And, you know, fortunate also to have seasons. So I'm very much used to, you know, leaves falling and snow coming, and then so I'm used to that change. So my like natural rhythms right now, being in Australia, they're confused.
Yeah. Is this your first like coming into autumn? Is this your first autumn here?
No, it's not my first autumn. It's my second autumn now, but I cannot understand how autumn and Easter are together. Because Easter and spring are together, and so I have to be careful when I'm like, oh, it's Easter, it's a time of change and renewal, and it's like, no, it's not. No, it's not.
It's time to get cozy and hibernate.
Yeah, it's time to get cozy. So the city I'm from is not very big. It's about 1 million people, more or less. So pretty small in comparison to when I first moved to Melbourne and then Sydney. Just a huge change. Yeah. And I grew up in a family with my mom and my dad, and I have a younger brother who is 6 years younger than I. My mom was married to someone previously, and she had me, and then that relationship ended, and then she met my dad, who I consider my dad. So technically, when you look at a picture of my family and I stand out a little bit because I'm actually half Indian Fijian and Canadian.
Oh, that's with a beautiful golden skin. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so that's why people get, you know, confused. They're like, are you Spanish? Are you Italian? Are you Lebanese? Yeah. What are you? You're not. And so I don't look like a lot of my family, but that's a little bit of the backstory on that. But my family's my family. They always have been, of course.
Beautiful. Yeah. How do you find being so far away from them?
I actually don't mind it. You know, no, I love my family. I think when we left Calgary, it was all in good timing because the economy was going down even more. And we're born and raised, and both of our parents, my husband and I, all of our parents have immigrated or moved from somewhere else in Canada to be in Calgary. And so it just seems sort of like it's in the family that as you get older and you get in your 30s, people leave their places where they're from. Like my husband's parents are from England. My mom is from the other side of Canada. She's from Eastern Canada and moved all the way to the West, which at the time was a really big deal back in like the 80s. That would be, I bet, yeah. And so it feels actually really natural. It feels really good. This feels like this is what we needed to do all along. Was just go somewhere else, because I think when you change your location and you create some sort of physical change in your life, it can bring about new perspective and just bring fresh new beginnings. It just felt like we were able to get out of the patterns that were starting to develop around us and just change things up and make new friends and have a new lifestyle. And honestly, it's been great. So we're not leaving. Australia stuck with us. Too bad. Yay.
Well, you're not going anywhere right now, that's for sure.
No. I can't go anywhere. We can't go anywhere right now. Haven needs the yin classes. I can't leave.
We are loving your yin classes, so lovely. And speaking of yoga, tell me tell me a little bit around how and when and why you got into yoga.
Yeah, so the first time I actually tried yoga was, I think I was probably about 12 years old. And my mom, I remember she came home from Costco one day, and you could get pretty cheap DVDs at Costco at the time. And she hands me a DVD when DVDs just first came out, basically, and that was pretty high.
Would have been like a novelty.
Yeah, that was a novelty. It was pretty high tech technology back then. She hands me a DVD of Rodney Yee and Sun Salutation Yoga. I don't know if you remember Rodney Yee, but he's pretty well known in the yoga community. He's an older guy now, but he's made a name for himself within the community. Anyways, she said to me, you know, I used to practice yoga when I was young. Here, you give it a try. And so I remember playing the DVD, and he's doing Sun Salutation A. So it's a but he's doing a very vigorous, quick vinyasa practice. And I remember, you know, arms up, come down, chaturanga, like, and I had no idea what he was doing. I was like, what is this chaturanga that he's doing? What is this push-up? I can't. And I just remember being fascinated by it, but I was perplexed at the same time. I just didn't understand what this was. And then I started to fall out from it. You know, being 12 years old at the time, you just, you know, you don't have enough information to kind of keep going with it. But then as I got older, probably about, I want to say 18 or 19, I had been doing a lot of running and preparing for a half marathon and a lot of weightlifting. And I took a yoga class nearby at the university I was going to, and I just loved it. It was just not like anything I've ever done before. And it was actually a hot yoga class, but more of a Mysore Ashtanga practice. So that was sort of the sort of central theme around it. And I asked my parents for Christmas, you know, can I have a yoga pass just so I can complement that with my running and my weightlifting? And they said, yeah, absolutely. And from there I got hooked, and it became less about a workout and a stretch and more about discovering a little bit more about myself and tapping more into that intuitive nature that I'd always had about me, and to actually get me thinking and maybe listening a little bit carefully to the voices inside of me, and just sort of trusting the process of what I'm supposed to do in my life. And when I was young, I always knew in my life that I needed to be serving in a way that was much more than just working in, say, customer service or working in corporate HR, which I did. And I needed to work in a job or in a field that just really fed my soul and really helped others, just truly help people and be supportive to people, because that was where I was naturally falling into. That's what I craved all the time. And so I kept going with that. And, you know, a couple times it crossed my mind, you should become a yoga teacher. You should do this. But I grew up in a family, and especially in a town of oil and gas, where it's like, no, you do not go into alternative health. We don't want any of this hippy dippy stuff in our family. So I didn't have the support around me. I didn't have the people around me to help build me up in that sense. And I always knew alternative health was the path to go into, but I didn't know what that meant. So, you know, I told my parents, oh, I'd like to become a yoga teacher. And even when I was younger, I even said things like, I want to be a healer. I want to do massage therapy. And, you know, they were not supportive about that. They said, absolutely not. You're not doing that. And acceptance from my family was very important for me. You know, I needed to have that acceptance from them and that approval. Now it doesn't matter so much because I've just gone rogue and I do my own thing. But that took some time to come to, right? And so I decided to go down a different path, and I did my degree in sociology, concentrating in criminology, deviance, and social control. But when I graduated at the time, we just had entered the recession in 2009. So it was not very good timing. So I worked a few odd jobs, and then I decided to go back to another school, and I completed my human resources management certification. So I did that, and that got my foot in the door into working in corporate jobs. So I worked in oil and gas, not for profit, and then back to oil and gas again, working in HR. I did everything HR related. You name it, I've done it. And while I was there, it was just this constant nagging feeling of, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're living a lie. Like, stop lying to yourself. And that voice kept getting louder and louder. It just felt like my inner me was clawing at myself, saying, you need to stop. You need to stop now, because this is not your path. You're not living your truth.
So great to have that strong intuition.
Yeah, exactly. And I was amongst a community of people that were not building me up. Corporate HR, especially the one I worked in, there was a lot of men and women always battling each other. It was a cutthroat environment, and it wasn't conducive to building each other up, which it should be, but it's not. And that's okay. I made peace with that, and I accepted that. And during a mass layoff of when oil and gas fell down a few years ago, I decided, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to pursue my yoga teaching studies full time. I'm doing this. Nothing's going to stop me. We're going for it. And I enrolled in a program that I thought was really suitable. I had an interview with my teacher, my director of the school. She thought I was a really good fit for it. And I just did it. I was like, I'm dropping everything. I quit my corporate job. I studied full time for a year, because the program was a year long. It wasn't a fly-by-nighter course or anything like that. It was a very serious course, and I haven't looked back. And then I just kept doing more trainings and connecting in with people, teaching people, doing one-on-ones and group classes, studios, gyms, community centers, churches, people's homes.
Yeah, well done. That's awesome.
And I just went with it, and more doors kept opening, and here we are already, over like 5 years of doing this. And sometimes I still can't believe I'm a yoga teacher. Like, what? Like, how can I be a yoga teacher? That's not possible. but it's true. I had to change my story.
Yeah.
And change is a big thing for me. I used to be scared of change, but I've come to really just embrace it and enjoy the process, because change in my life has brought me really good things. And so physically removing myself and being away from my family has been good. It's created really good change for me. And, changing my job has created really good change for me. And so
sometimes you need to kind of remove yourself from the environment to be able to then, go wholeheartedly into something. So that's cool. That's what a wonderful story. And how has your yoga practice kind of like changed or developed? Or have you gone from, because I remember like at the start of my practice, I tried out different kinds of yoga, and then I've sort of moved into, your own style, or how
totally. That's a really good question. And I think everyone has a similar story. Unless you're a hardcore Ashtanga yogi, they never change. They always be the same. I started off in more Ashtanga style yoga, a little more of intense practice. It was always a focus on having a heated room, always flowy, all that kind of stuff, making it a little bit more of a dance in a way in some respects. Very much focused on some alignment, I think, in some regards. And then I just sort of fell out of it. I lost interest in Ashtanga, to be honest with you. It just wasn't fully interesting me anymore. And I just started doing some more research. So when I enrolled in the training program, the first one that I did, I made sure that the program I was in was the yoga style that they were teaching was more suited to what I was after. And I ended up actually going the Iyengar yoga route. So again, it was very focused on alignment, but the teacher that taught it to us, she taught with Iyengar directly in the 80s. And
amazing.
So she had
Was this in Canada?
This was in Canada. Yeah. She had went to India in the 80s and taught with him. And so she knew him very well. And her teaching style was just very compassionate, very loving, very supportive. And yes, there were some things with the asana that was strict, but she just had a way about her that just made you love it. And I till this day, I still very much enjoy Iyengar style to some degree. I've loosened up things with regards to alignment. And, the students watching this know now that even in our classes, we're not focusing a lot on alignment. We talk about that all the time, switch up your body if you need to in the pose. And so I then decided, it'd be good to sort of challenge what I've just learned in this program with something else. And at the time I was also taking a lot of yin yoga classes. I knew I loved it, but I didn't understand why I loved it and why the teacher was able to just make it so much more accommodating for us and our bodies. And I went on to study with her. Actually, I was taking her classes quite a bit, Debbie Sarada in Canada. And I just fell in love with it, just learning a lot more about the actual biomechanical movements of the skeleton and how we're all shaped differently just within our bones. You know, we're so focused on the exterior, but you know, we're not acknowledging that all of us have different ranges of motion, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to things like Instagram culture with, you know, yoga pose shots and all that kind of fun stuff, that adds to the mess of you know, the diet culture and all that kind of stuff. And it's painting a really wrong picture, because it's showing people that, oh, you too can look like this if you just keep practicing, when in fact that's not the case. That's not the case. And maybe your body is not meant to do that, and you could seriously hurt yourself. And so that really challenged what I learned about more of the sort of that hatha yang style yoga, combining it with the yin, and the two together brought a really beautiful complement to my knowledge. And that's what I like to offer today. Obviously I teach a lot of yin at the studio, but when I'm teaching in other places, still doing a lot of sort of Iyengar hatha fusion in there, with some yin principles in mind. Basically make your yoga work for you and benefit you, not against you, right? Not against your body, right? So
I like that, make your yoga work for you. That's a beautiful saying.
Exactly. I mean, you have to enjoy your practice. If you don't enjoy your practice, then you're not going to keep up with it. And that was the whole thing for me, how it changed my life, sort of going into that question. Yoga gave me purpose. You know, yoga was able to help me listen deeper into those, you know, internal whispers in my mind, in my soul, my spirit, whatever. And it's also connected me with the community of people that I needed in my life.
And it's interesting, because I've got a similar story, just in the sense like you. Like I originally got into hot yoga as well, and I was chasing the body. Like I was definitely I think I was introduced to it because, you know, I was introduced to it as this cool new, you know, exercise that you can do to, you know, shrink your body or whatever, torch fat away or melt body fat, whatever it was. But that was one of the practices that I did at the start. And then I explored, I think I did do like a few different kinds of yoga, but definitely sort of hot yoga I got into most. But it was what kept me coming back was what it did for my managing my anxiety, and the connection I had between my mind and body and the community as well. So it was like, yeah, sometimes, you know, you're driven towards something for one reason, but you come out with something much different. So
well that was just it. And you know, I think in terms of, you know, how it relates into with, you know, your ethos and the mission at Haven, in that, you know, for years I always struggled with my body image. It didn't matter how thin I was or how big I was, it was still the exact same perception every single time. It didn't matter if I physically was changing. I was never happy with myself, but the yoga truly, and I remember one day this just clicked. It hasn't been forever. It was only maybe about 2 years ago that this finally clicked. In that, you know, and I've said this to you before, like, oh my God, I'm more than just a body. Like this, it's just a physical body. Like there's so much more. And when I realized that, for me, that was just very healing. You know,
wonderful.
You know, there's so much more metaphysical and spiritual and amazing things going on in my mind and within this world. What does it matter what this looks like?
Yeah,
you know?
that's so cool too.
Yeah, and that story has to change. I had to change that story too, and I had to change that dialogue, because it just was not working. And that's my theme last year. You know what, Monica? This isn't working. Change.
That's great. Oh, that's such a good realization to have. And I think a lot of us, and I hear this kind of sentiment a lot with people, is, you know, understanding things kind of intellectually, but then not embodying it. But it sounds like you've really kind of embodied that penny dropped or whatever 2 years ago. Yeah, that's a real beautiful place to be in.
Definitely.
And I think that really comes through in your teaching to our members too. So it's just so wonderful to have somebody who's so on the same page. Bless.
Yes. No, thank you. No, I mean, it's just so inspiring to be here because, you know, like I said to you when I met you, I feel like Haven is just so progressive with this. And why don't we have a Haven on every single corner, like, you know, 7-Eleven, you know, we should. That'd be amazing.
Haven McDonald's.
Every McDonald's, yeah. Every Macca's. So oh. I had to get used to that when I moved here. I'm like, what's Macca's?
Oh yeah. Everything in Aussie is like ends in an AS or an O or an Y or whatever.
Yeah.
We like our abbreviations. Yeah. And so tell me, what about favorite pose? Would you say? I mean, I know that's a pretty hard question,
that was such a hard question for me. Out of all the questions, that was the hardest one. So how I narrowed it down is, where was I getting the most benefit through my whole body? And I think what it came down to was I really love Supta Baddha Konasana. So that's reclined bound angle pose, also known as either like a reclined butterfly in yin yoga as well. Sort of, they're very similar. They come from the same archetype of posture. But I just love that posture because it's, first of all, it feels really great after you've eaten if you're trying to digest your food, helps with digestion. It's a really nice gentle heart opener, really great for the spine as well. A bit of a gentle back bending in there as well. And really great stretch for your inner thighs and outer hips too. So I thought about it. I'm like, that's got to be the winner because it's hitting all these different spots, in the upper body and in the lower body as well. It is
a really lovely shape too. I enjoy that too. And I think that's a nice one that you can adjust for different bodies and different needs and the time and using props. And
that's another thing. I have to say, I think anytime I'm teaching a class and if I'm setting up the room, I'll put the bolsters down and immediately everyone, before even class starts, they all go into Supta Baddha Konasana. I'm like, I knew you were going to do that.
Pretty comfy shape, especially with the bolster under your knees.
Yeah. Exactly. And there's so many different ways you can do it to support yourself. You know, you can use props or not. And it can also be very meditative. You can actually meditate fully in the more restorative version of Supta Baddha Konasana. So I think it's just all around, it hits all those spots for me.
I agree. That's a very good choice.
Yeah.
And now to close, I just have one final question for you, and that's, can you give us a funny Monica fact or something a bit quirky or something that we wouldn't know about you?
Yeah. So, okay, I'll give you something recently that I've been hiding from people, and my husband actually embarrassed me in front of a group of people one time. So I'll tell you more of the scenario. I'll tell you this little story. So my best friend, she was trying to teach me how to play crib. It was a card game. And this was a couple years ago. And I think we were at a brewery. I can't remember, but we brought a card game with us. And she's like, let's play crib. I said, okay, I don't know how to play. And she's like, well, let me teach you. And she's really terrible at instructions. Like, she's the worst teacher in the world. I said to her, I'm like, Jen, never be a teacher, please, for love of God. Like, I know I'm terrible. And I said, yes. And so she's teaching me the instructions and she's going really fast. And I'm sitting there, I'm like going, okay. And I just keep seeing, okay, it's not stopping. It's getting bad. And in my head, I'm like swirling. I'm like, oh my God, what is this game? I don't understand this. And my husband goes, whoa, stop, Jen, I just want you to stop. And she's like, why, what's wrong? If Monica says about 5 okays in a row, it's not okay. And I was like, no, don't tell her. So my tell is if I'm not getting something, or if it's not okay, I just keep saying okay, because sometimes I'm just not confident enough to tell you that I don't understand.
Just so cute. Well, now we'll know how to watch out for that. I don't think I've had any experiences where you've gone, okay. So that's probably a good thing, right?
After that incident, I've told myself now, okay, you got to change that. That's just stop. So I don't do that as much. And then my other quirk is, and this one's, I don't know, everyone's just like, oh my God, really? That's your thing? I can't be wearing sandals or walking bare feet outside unless I wash my feet before I go to bed. And same with my husband. He has to wash his feet before he goes to bed.
That's interesting that you guys have both got it.
Well, no, I make him do it. That's the thing.
Oh.
That's the twist. So I can't do it. Dirty feet for me is just that's a real no-go. And especially my sheets, right? They're nice and clean, they're white.
It's a good point. Yeah. I mean, like if you're outdoors and you don't know what you're on and then you jump into bed.
Yeah, so I can't stand it when I see people walking around bare feet, and in my head I'm thinking, oh, you better wash those feet before you get to bed, buddy.
How does your husband feel about it?
Oh, you know what? He used to hate it so much, and now he just accepts it. He's just like, yeah, he's just like, this probably is healthier for us anyways, and his feet look a lot better for it. So
I think it's not the worst kind of quirk you could have in those instances. I'm sure there will be worse things that a wife might suggest her husband does. So I think it's a nice thing.
Totally,
it's kind of endearing.
That's the way I am.
We all have these funny little quirks, and that's what makes us all human, right?
Yeah.
So lovely to chat with you and round up a few bits and pieces of cool stuff that we can share with our members. So thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that you want to share or mention?
Just that I've recently started a podcast for sort of meditation and yoga talks. So there's currently one episode on there right now. And
that's so wonderful. Well done.
I'm so excited about it. I just decided enough's enough. I need to do this. I've always been fascinated by radio, especially even like old time radio episodes and that kind of stuff. And I love podcasts right now, and have for the last little bit. And so I just decided, I need to do this, but I just figured, I need all this fancy equipment. But one day I just decided enough. I'm just going to record it on my phone. It's not supposed to be perfect. And
it's so amazing what you can do with, we've, turned our studio into an online studio in a matter of like a weekend, I think. Yeah. And we've all kind of managed with, what we've got, and maybe buying a few bits and pieces here and there. So we've done pretty well.
It's so true. Yeah. So Havenites, please look out for that. It's I'll keep adding to it as we go. So the first episode is meditation for sleep. So that's a really good one to.
Oh, that's perfect. I think I'll be listening to that tonight.
Yeah, please do. One of my friends texted me, said she fell asleep after 3 minutes.
That's a very, very good sign. I will put the little link in when I share this video as well, so that members can find it below. That's just lovely to hear. I'm a big fan of podcasts, so I can't wait to listen to it myself. Yeah. And how often are you going to be doing the records for it?
That's a good question. I'm because I just started this. I'm trying to. I also try to time it with no planes going over, because I live in a real heavy plane
in the west
zone. Yeah, yeah. The flight path here is awesome, isn't it?
They call it the Marrickville pause. Have you heard of that?
Yeah. It's so true. And lately it's been a lot quieter because of COVID-19, obviously. So I was just saying to my husband yesterday, I need to get on and just all of a sudden do a whole bunch of mass recordings.
Do the more you can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm hoping next week I can get something out. Hopefully.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, next time your next episode comes out, you can share it on our Facebook page, and I'll make sure that everybody knows all about it. But thank you so much for your beautiful energy and continuing to deliver classes online for our guys. They really just love it, and I love it too. So thank you.
Anna. Appreciate that.
Thanks for the lovely chat, and we'll see you online soon.
Yeah.
Thanks, lovely.
Thank you.